Whenever life becomes too heavy, whenever our minds feel exhausted and our hearts feel burdened with sadness, many of us turn to the one thing that has the power to lift our spirit: laughter. And for countless people around the world, that laughter came from the genius of one extraordinary man. A man whose silent expressions spoke louder than words, whose gentle smile could ease a day full of worries, and whose simple walk on screen could bring comfort to those drowning in their own thoughts. Charlie Chaplin. His films soothed broken hearts, relaxed anxious minds, and brought joy into homes where pain and struggle lived for years. He became a symbol of hope, proof that even in the darkest moments, one spark of humor can remind us that life still has light. But what the world often forgets is this: before he made millions laugh, his own life was surrounded by sadness. Before he created happiness on screen, he survived a childhood filled with hunger, fear, and instability. Before he became a legend, he walked the cold streets of London as a little boy who did not know when his next meal would come or whether his family would survive another day. Behind the magic of every smile he gave the world was a young heart that had endured more suffering than most could imagine. Yet he transformed that suffering into art, turning his deepest wounds into the purest form of laughter. This is the story of the man who carried pain in his heart, but still chose to heal the world. This is the journey of Charlie Chaplin, the artist who turned his struggles into joy for humanity. Charlie Chaplin was born on April 16, 1889, in a poor district of South London, England. His parents, Charles Chaplin Sr. and Hannah Chaplin, were music hall performers who struggled to survive. Their marriage was falling apart, money was scarce, and Charlie's earliest memories were shaped by cold rooms, thin blankets, and nights of hunger. His father drank heavily and provided almost nothing for the family. His mother worked as hard as she could, singing in small halls, stitching clothes, and taking whatever job she could find, but her income was never enough. Some days, Charlie and his half-brother Sidney had nothing to eat. Hannah was gentle and artistic, but her health began to fail. She would lose her voice on stage, forget lines, or collapse emotionally. Her illness grew worse each year, leaving her sons alone, frightened, and unsure when she would return. Even as a child, Charlie carried a remarkable gift. He watched people closely, neighbors, teachers, drunkards, even animals, and imitated their movements with surprising accuracy. He could turn sadness into comedy and silence into applause long before he understood it as talent. One evening, when he was about 5, Hannah's voice failed during a performance. The audience grew restless. In desperation, the manager pushed little Charlie onto the stage. He began singing, dancing, and copying his mother's routines. Slowly, the angry murmurs faded. Smiles appeared. Laughter filled the hall. For the first time, the world saw a spark of Charlie Chaplin. And for the first time, Charlie felt the magic of performance. By 1896, Hannah's health collapsed completely. With no money, no food, and no way to survive, Charlie and Sidney were taken to the Lambeth workhouse, a place meant for survival, not childhood. Life inside was harsh. Long dormitories, rough uniforms, strict routines, plain food, and complete separation from their mother. After a short time, the brothers were transferred to the Central London District School at Hanwell. The conditions were cleaner and the food slightly better, but the days were long and lonely. Charlie remembered thin porridge, endless queues, marching in lines, doing chores, and missing his mother so deeply that it hurt. He rarely saw her. After 18 months, the boys were briefly reunited with Hannah, but by July 1898, her health failed again. The family broke apart once more. Charlie and Sydney were returned to the workhouse system, and Hannah was admitted to Cane Hill Hospital, where people with serious mental health problems were treated in those days. During this unstable period, the boys stayed with their father, a man they barely knew, who struggled with severe alcoholism and offered little comfort or stability. In 1901, when Charlie was 12, his father died from alcohol-related illness. He left no money, no security, and no support for the boys. Hannah's condition worsened further under the pressure of poverty and illness. Despite the darkness surrounding them, a small light remained. During the rare moments when Hannah felt well, she taught Charlie songs, rhythms, and bits of stagecraft. He watched performers closely, absorbing their timing and gestures. Even in the hardest days, the dream of the stage stayed alive inside him. Around age 9, his talent caught the attention of William Jackson, the leader of a well-known children's clog dancing troupe. Charlie joined the 8 Lancashire Lads and performed in music halls across the country. The small wages he earned helped him survive. It was his first real step into the world of performance. But as he grew older, roles for small boys faded and the work disappeared again. To survive, Charlie took whatever jobs he could find. He polished boots, carried heavy loads, sold newspapers, delivered messages, and labored in dusty print shops. The work was exhausting, the pay was tiny, and life remained unstable. Still, every night he held on to one quiet hope, that the stage would return to him. By the early 1900s, he needed steady income more than ever. He searched theater boards constantly until he secured a small role in the play Jim, A Romance of Cockaigne. Being back on stage renewed his confidence. Soon after, he received a far more important opportunity, the role of Billy the Page Boy in the touring stage play Sherlock Holmes. The production toured for nearly 2.5 years and took him across England. For the first time, he had proper shoes, decent clothes, and meals that made him strong. More importantly, he finally felt a sense of belonging. But life struck again. In May 1903, Hannah suffered another severe mental collapse. Charlie, just 14, had to take her himself to the infirmary. From there, she was sent back to Cane Hill Hospital. He returned home alone, searching for food, trying to survive until Sydney returned from the Navy. The memory of walking beside his sick mother became one of the deepest wounds of his life. By the age of 14, Charlie had endured extreme poverty, survived workhouses, lost his father, watched his mother collapse again and again, and carried responsibilities far beyond his years. Yet something powerful remained inside him, a determination to survive, a tenderness toward human suffering, and an extraordinary ability to find humor even in sorrow. These painful early years shaped the artist he was becoming. Every audience he made laugh helped him rise above fear and loneliness. Every step on stage reminded him that he was more than the hardships he had lived through. He was no longer just a poor boy from South London, England. He was becoming something else, an artist with a gift the world had not yet imagined. By the time Charlie Chaplin reached his late teens, he had already lived more lives than most men twice his age. A child of poverty, a workhouse survivor, a street performer, a touring actor, and a boy who carried responsibilities far heavier than his small frame. Yet the world still had no idea what he was capable of. Life was quietly guiding him toward a stage far bigger than he could imagine. When the touring play Sherlock Holmes came to an end, Charlie found himself once again wandering the streets of London, looking for work. His shoes were worn, his clothes thin, but his determination never faded. He visited theaters, auditioned for small roles, and performed wherever someone allowed him. He loved the stage, but the work was irregular, and the wages barely kept him alive. Still, he refused to give up. Somewhere deep inside, he believed his moment was waiting, a stage big enough for his dreams. In 1907, that moment arrived. Fred Karno, known across England as the king of comedy sketches in pantomime, was running the most successful troupe in the country. Charlie's older brother Sidney had already joined Karno's company and believed his younger brother belonged there too. He introduced Charlie to the troupe, hoping the managers would recognize the spark he had always seen. They did. Karno's team noticed Charlie's natural timing, expressive body movement, and the way his face could shift from innocence to mischief in a heartbeat. They offered him a contract. Charlie later said joining Karno felt like entering a new world. Life under Fred Karno was rigorous. Performers rehearsed endlessly, practicing every gesture, every stumble, every moment of silence until it was perfect. Charlie learned how to fall dramatically without injury, how to build a joke with nothing but his eyes, how to make audiences roar without saying a word. Night after night, he discovered the music hidden inside physical comedy. Traveling with the troupe, Charlie performed in packed theaters, smoky music halls, and tiny towns where laughter was the only escape people had from their struggles. Slowly, he became one of Karno's brightest performers. His big breakthrough came in a sketch called Birds, where he played a drunken audience member who wandered onto the stage, disrupting the performance. His movements were clumsy yet graceful, foolish yet strangely touching. Audiences adored him. Critics mentioned him by name, and within the troupe, his reputation began to rise. Charlie would later say that in Birds, he discovered a character inside himself, the lonely outsider who wanted dignity, the kind-hearted fool who kept getting back up, no matter how many times life knocked him down. This character would one day become the Tramp. Karno's success spread across the Atlantic, and in 1910, the troupe embarked on an American tour. Charlie was selected for the journey. When he stepped into the United States, he felt the rush of a place alive with energy, theaters booming, entertainment growing, opportunities everywhere. Night after night, American audiences fell in love with him. His grace, timing, and quiet humor captivated crowds who had never seen a performer like him. For the first time in his life, Charlie wasn't just surviving, he was shining. The troupe toured again in 1912 to 1913, and during that second American tour, fate walked into one of the theaters. A representative from Keystone Studios had come to watch the performances. Hollywood was still young, its films silent and chaotic, but it was hungry for new talent, especially for performers who could communicate emotion without words. Charlie was perfect. After watching him perform, the Keystone representative approached Charlie backstage and offered him a chance to work in motion pictures. Charlie was hesitant and excited at the same time. He didn't fully understand the world of film, but something inside him told him to step forward. In December 1913, he stepped off a train in Los Angeles with a small suitcase, a few coins, and a heart full of hope. Hollywood was not yet the glamorous empire it would someday become. It was dusty, noisy, experimental, a place where directors, writers, and actors were still inventing what cinema could be. Without realizing it, Charlie was about to transform this world forever. Keystone Studios, run by Max Sennett, specialized in wild slapstick comedies, frantic chases, flying pies, and explosive gags. Charlie felt out of place at first. He had been trained in delicate timing and emotional comedy, not chaotic mayhem. Sennett didn't know what to do with him, and Charlie feared he had made a terrible mistake. But destiny was already at work. In early 1914, Charlie appeared in his first film, Making a Living. The experience felt strange. The bright lights, the silence on set, the absence of a live audience. Yet when the camera rolled, his instinct took over. Audiences noticed something different about him. His expressions were subtle, his movements controlled, His comedy gentle but powerful. Still, Charlie felt he hadn't truly found his place. Not yet. The moment that changed everything happened while preparing for another film, Mabel's Strange Predicament. Sennett told him to look funny. Charlie walked into the wardrobe department and, acting on pure instinct, assembled a look. Baggy trousers, a tight coat, a small derby hat, oversized shoes, and a thin cane. When he looked in the mirror, something clicked. He saw a character who was poor, yet proud, clumsy, yet clever, vulnerable, yet hopeful. A little man who would always get back up after being knocked down. When cameras rolled, magic happened. The walk, the tilt of the hat, the twirl of the cane, everything flowed naturally. The crew burst into laughter. Sennett stared astonished. A new character had been born. The world would call him the Tramp. When the film was released, audiences connected instantly. This strange, lovable wanderer felt like someone they knew, someone who carried pain inside but wore humor on the outside. Charlie had created something universal, something timeless. Within months, the Tramp appeared in film after film, and Charlie became one of Keystone's biggest stars. Children imitated his walk. Newspapers featured his picture. Theater owners demanded more of him. Silent film audiences, who had never heard his voice, felt as if they understood his soul. Charlie was still living modestly, sending money home to support his mother, working tirelessly to improve his craft. But Hollywood was changing around him. Directors listened to his ideas. Producers trusted his instincts. Slowly, he began blending humor with emotion, something no one had done before, and audiences felt the difference. The boy who once slept in workhouses was now shaping the future of film. By the end of 1914, Charlie Chaplin was no longer just a rising star. He was a phenomenon. The Tramp had become a global symbol, a reminder that even the poorest, loneliest soul could carry hope in his pocket and dignity in his walk. Hollywood had given Charlie a camera. He gave the world a heart. And yet this was only the beginning of his legend. By 1915, Charlie Chaplin had become the star audiences waited for. But inside him grew a deeper ambition, not just to perform, but to create. Leaving Keystone, he joined S&A, gaining freedom to shape his comedy with emotion and meaning. Films like The Tramp and A Night Out showed the world that silent comedy could carry both laughter and heart. In 1916, Mutual Films offered Charlie one of the richest contracts in entertainment history, not just a reward, but a recognition of genius. At Mutual, he perfected his craft, rehearsing tirelessly, shaping every gesture, every pause, every glance. Movies like The Immigrant, Easy Street, and The Vagabond blended humor with humanity, turning the Tramp from a comedic figure into a symbol of resilience and hope. The world took notice. By 1918, Charlie was the most beloved entertainer on the planet. His films reached every corner of the globe, comforting a world wounded by the Great War. When audiences watched the Tramp stumble and rise again, they felt their own spirits lifting. He became more than a performer. He became a universal friend. With fame came independence. In 1919, Charlie co-founded United Artists, freeing himself completely from studio control. Now he could make films on his own terms, taking as long as needed to achieve perfection. This independence allowed Charlie to create his next masterpiece, The Kid, 1921. Drawing from his own childhood of hunger and abandonment, Charlie created a story of love between a vagabond and a small orphan. It moved audiences to tears, proving that comedy could reveal the deepest human truths. But Charlie was not finished. He wanted something larger in vision. Inspired by images of the Klondike miners, he created The Gold Rush, 1925. Filming in icy conditions and elaborate sets, he turns suffering into humor and survival into art. Scenes such as the shoe eating and the bread roll dance became cinematic treasures. Charlie later said this was the film he wished to be remembered by. As Hollywood embraced talking pictures, Charlie again trusted silence. He believed the tramp spoke most honestly without words. So he created City Lights, 1931, a silent film in a world that had moved on to sound. The simple story of a poor man trying to help a blind flower girl became his emotional masterpiece. The final scene, when she finally recognizes him, left audiences breathless. Through these years, Charlie Chaplin did more than entertain. He reshaped cinema. He proved that comedy could carry compassion, that silence could speak volumes, and that a humble figure in worn shoes could embody the entire human experience. As the Great Depression tightened its grip on millions, factories became harsher, machines replaced workers, and people felt trapped inside a system that no longer cared for them. Charlie Chaplin watched this with growing concern. He believed the world was losing its humanity, and he decided to express that fear through The Tramp. The result was Modern Times, a film where the tramp battles conveyor belts, strict bosses, and machines that swallow him whole. While the rest of Hollywood embraced talking pictures, Charlie again refused to let the tramp speak. He believed that silence carried more truth about hardship than dialogue ever could. Filming was demanding and dangerous. Charlie performed stunts inside giant gears, sped along assembly lines, and balanced comedy with the real pain millions were feeling. Yet amid the chaos, he created unforgettable humor. The feeding machine, the roller skating scene, the gibberish song. Each moment exposed the struggle of workers while still offering laughter to those who needed it most. At the heart of the film was the tramp's bond with the gamin, a brave young woman fighting her own battles with poverty. Their connection gave the story warmth, two lonely souls holding each other up in a world determined to break them. When Modern Times released in 1936, audiences recognized themselves in it. They saw their fears, their exhaustion, their hopes, all reflected through the tramp's gentle courage. The film ends with one of the most comforting images in cinema history. The tramp and the gamin walking down an empty road toward an uncertain future, as Charlie encourages her, "Buck up, never say die." It was a message to the world that even in the hardest times, the human spirit can rise again. As the world moved toward war, dictators rose across Europe and fear spread through entire nations. While many artists stayed silent, Charlie Chaplin chose the opposite path. He decided to confront tyranny itself. The result was his boldest and riskiest creation ever, The Great Dictator. Charlie played two roles, a cruel dictator inspired by Adolf Hitler, and a humble Jewish barber who simply wanted to live in peace. Through satire, he exposed the madness of hatred and the brutality of fascism at a time when few dared to criticize it openly. Making the film was an enormous emotional burden. Charlie researched news reports, studied speeches, and watched the growing violence in Europe with horror. He knew the world was heading toward disaster, and he believed comedy could reveal truths that politics refused to face. Germany banned the film before it was even finished. Some American politicians called him a troublemaker. Studio executives begged him to stop. Many people warned Charlie not to make it. Some feared it would anger powerful groups. Others said audiences did not want political films, but Charlie followed his conscience. When The Great Dictator released in 1940, America had not yet entered World War II. The film shocked the world. It was hilarious, brave, and heartbreakingly honest. And at the end came one of the most famous speeches in cinema history, Charlie stepping out of character to speak as himself, pleading for kindness, unity, and humanity. His trembling words reached millions, offering hope in a time of fear. The great dictator proved that comedy could be a weapon for truth, that art could challenge cruelty, and that one man with a camera could confront a world full of hatred. It was Chaplin's loudest cry for peace, and the moment he risked everything to defend humanity. After The Great Dictator, Charlie Chaplin moved from praise into political fire. America entered a period of suspicion, and Charlie, an outspoken immigrant who spoke of peace and refused U.S. citizenship, became an easy target. Newspapers questioned his loyalty. Rumors spread that he was un-American. Public admiration slowly turned into doubt. In 1943, the Joan Barry paternity case exploded. Blood tests proved Charlie was not the father, but the court rejected the evidence. Headlines portrayed him as immoral. Politicians attacked him. Religious groups condemned him. The FBI gathered files on his speeches, friendships, and even the messages within his films. Charlie, who had spent his life entertaining humanity, was now treated as a threat. Even in this climate of hatred, Charlie kept creating. In 1947, he made Monsieur Verdoux, a daring, dark satire about a man forced into crime by society's cruelty. It was artistically brilliant, but America rejected it. Critics labeled it dangerous. Charlie felt more isolated than ever. During this time, he poured his heart into Limelight, a deeply personal story about Calvaro, an aging performer coping with fading fame. Charlie completed Limelight in America in 1952, just before leaving. That same year, he boarded a ship to London for the film's premiere. But while still at sea, he received shocking news. The U.S. government had revoked his re-entry permit. Without trial or explanation, America had exiled him, the very man who helped build its film industry. Charlie stood on the deck, staring at the ocean, realizing that the country he helped shape, the industry he helped create, and the screens he filled with laughter had turned its back forever. But beside him stood Una, who held his hand with unwavering loyalty. With her and their children, Charlie began a new life in Switzerland. They settled at Manoir de Bonn in Switzerland, a peaceful estate overlooking Lake Geneva. Quiet gardens, gentle hills, and calm mornings replaced Hollywood's chaos. But exile did not erase the pain. Charlie had given America his art, his creativity, his youth, and had been pushed out without justice. Meanwhile, Limelight released in the U.S., but Charlie was not there to present it. Many refused to watch it because of the man, not the message. Yet over time, the film slowly found its audience. Critics eventually recognized it as one of Charlie's most emotional creations. In Switzerland, life found a new rhythm. Charlie walked the garden paths in the mornings. He wrote and composed in the afternoons. Evenings were filled with the laughter of his children, noisy, joyful, healing. Through Una's steady love, the bitterness inside him softened. During this period, Charlie began writing his autobiography, revisiting every memory, the hunger of childhood, the rise of fame, the joy of creating The Tramp, and the pain of exile. Writing helped him reclaim his story, not as newspapers painted him, but as he truly lived. And though far from Hollywood, Charlie never stopped being an artist. Quietly, patiently, he prepared for the next chapter, with the soul of a man who had seen the world turn its back on him, and still found the strength to keep creating. As the years passed, the anger and suspicion that once surrounded Charlie Chaplin began to fade. A new generation discovered his films, and critics re-examined his work without political bias. Slowly, people realized that the world had treated him unfairly, that the accusations, the fear, and the exile had overshadowed the brilliance of a true artist. Charlie, now living quietly in Switzerland, watched this shift with humility. He spent his days writing, composing music, and enjoying time with his large family. Though the wound of exile remained, he felt a gentle peace growing around him. In 1972, something remarkable happened. Hollywood, the same Hollywood that had turned its back on him, invited him to return and receive a special honorary Oscar. Charlie, now 82, hesitated. After 20 years of exile, he did not know how he would be received. But Una encouraged him to go, reminding him that the world he had once entertained still loved him. When he walked onto the Oscar stage, the audience rose to its feet. The applause lasted 12 minutes, the longest standing ovation in Academy Awards history. Actors cried, directors bowed. It was as if an entire industry was apologizing at once. Charlie stood there quietly, overwhelmed. After decades of pain, this moment restored a piece of his spirit. In the following years, he received honors from film institutes, governments, universities, and artists around the world. Statues were built, retrospectives organized, and his films restored. The world had rediscovered not just a comedian, but a pioneer who shaped cinema itself. Charlie spent his final years at Manoir de Bon, walking slowly through the gardens, telling stories to his children, and watching the seasons change over Lake Geneva. Surrounded by love, he finally found the peace he had long been denied. On Christmas morning, 1977, Charlie Chaplin passed away in his sleep at the age of 88. The world mourned him like a family member. Newspapers across continents paid tribute. People watched his films again, remembering the little man who taught them to laugh through their tears. Charlie's life had begun in suffering and ended in honor. And the tramp, gentle, hopeful, and unbreakable, continued his walk across generations. Even after Charlie Chaplin left this world, the tramp continued to walk, across generations and across hearts. Children laughed at his gentle clumsiness. Adults saw their struggles mirrored in his hopeful eyes. Directors studied his timing. Actors borrowed his expression. He was not just a comedian. He was a symbol of the human spirit. Born in poverty and loneliness, Charlie turned hardship into art, pain into laughter, and silence into a universal language. His films crossed borders without passports, speaking directly to something deeper, the human heart. His life ended in Switzerland, but his spirit did not. The tramp, fragile, kind, and unbreakable, still walks through time, reminding us that even in darkness there is light, and even in sorrow there is laughter. Charlie Chaplin didn't just make us laugh, he helped us feel human, and that is why he will never be forgotten. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.